So welcome back to Managerial Accounting. What I'd like to do in this little mini lecture here is to review the last couple of exercises we did in class, specifically 6 and 7, and also 8, which we never got to. So let's take a look at exercise number 6, and I'd like you to pay attention to particular things in the illustration here. So this is exercise 6. So you can find, if you want to follow along, you can follow along in your textbooks on page 125. So they give us a chart. They've already computed the equivalent units for this period. So we can see with regard to the inventory and process at the beginning of the period. So with regard to work done this period, there was 0 equivalent units of direct materials. There's 1,200 units with regard to conversion costs for this stuff. There were 38,000 units that were started and completed this period. The total amount transferred to the next department, the filing department, was 38,000 for materials and 40,000 for conversion costs. And on the ending inventory, we had 6,200 equivalent units for inventory, and we had 2,480 units, equivalent units with regard to conversion costs. Also, please note that the cost per equivalent unit for direct materials is 45 cents and conversion costs are 15, and that the beginning inventory has a cost of $2,200. And what we're asked to do is determine the cost of goods, cost of completed and transferred out of production, the ending work in process inventory, and the total cost assigned. So here, these are all in equivalent units. And what they want us to do is to assign dollars to these various amounts. So I'm going to change gears and hopefully I'll click on the right spot here. So in terms of the solution here, let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Move my head up here. So the beginning inventory, our total costs are $2,200. With regard to conversion costs, we had 1,200 units. And notice the conversion cost, the rate per unit is 15 cents. So we take 1,200 times 15, 0.15, and that gives us $180 worth of conversion costs with regard to the beginning inventory. So the total costs related to the beginning inventory are $2,380. We add to that the cost of goods started and completed, and you can see our computation here. There were 38,000 units started and completed. So our materials cost are 45 cents a unit, which gives us 17,460. And our conversion costs are 38,000 units times 0.15, which gives us 5,280. So the beginning inventory plus the conversion cost related to the beginning inventory, and then the cost started and completed of 23,280 gives us the total cost of the goods transferred out and completed, which is 25,660. And then what we need to do is we need to figure out what the ending inventory was. Now, the ending inventory, the equivalent units in the ending inventory, if I go back to the original problem, were 6,200 units that we had in the ending inventory. Materials costs were 45 cents, so 6,200 times 0.45 gives us the 2,790. And then the conversion cost, we had equivalent units was 2,480 times 15 cents gives us 362. So the total cost assigned between the goods transferred out and the ending inventory is 28,822. All right. So I would spend some time reflecting on this. Be prepared to do a similar schedule yourself. So the key thing here is to figure out the equivalent units, which in this case were given, and then to take the equivalent units and multiplied by the equivalent the cost per equivalent unit. So we had cost per equivalent unit for conversion of 0.15 and materials cost of 0.45. Right. So I did put that up on the board, but Ramona, this one's for you. I think it may be a little bit clearer here than it was up on the board. All right, so that was exercise 6. Let me go back to exercise 7 for a moment. I can find my way back there. So they want us to process journal entries. So we did this one in class as well. Cost of materials transferred into the filling department of the skincare company here is $20,500, which includes $6,000 from blending department and $14,250 from the materials. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to have to do journal entries for all these things. So we're going to have to be debiting work in process for the $20,250 of materials, and we're going to have to end up crediting the cost transferred in from the blending department and the materials from the storeroom. And I'll show you the journal entries in a moment for that. The conversion cost of this period is $6,372, including factory overhead applied and $4,772 in direct labor. So we're going to have to be debiting work in process for the cost transferred into the filling department. And then we're going to have to credit the factory overhead applied of $1,600. And the direct labor, we're going to recognize wages payable of $4,772. And the total cost transferred to finished goods for the year was $25,660. So we're going to have to debit the finished goods, and we're going to have to credit the work in process for $25,660. And it also tells us the filing department had a beginning inventory of $2,200. So on the basis of that, well, we have to do two things. In A, we have to journalize the entries for a cost of transferred in materials, the conversion costs, and the cost transferred to finished goods. And then B, we're going to have to determine the cost of the work in process inventory filling at the end of the period. So there's the data that was given. And now let's jump or leap to the solution. Okay. So the first entry, and yes, it does matter what order you put these things in. So the first one is a debit to work in process, the filling department, which reflects the cost transferred in from the billing department and also from materials. Then in B, we had wages incurred. This is direct wages incurred of $4,772. And we also applied $1,600 worth of costs. You combine overhead and wages. And Ryan, this one is for you. If you combine overhead and wages, you have conversion costs here. So this reflects the conversion cost this period, $6,372. And then also in A, finishing up in A, you had goods costs transferred out of the filing department into finished goods of $25,660. So that's a debit to finished goods and a credit to work in process filling of $25,600. So those are my three journal entries. The first one is to show the transfer of costs and the materials. Second one here is the conversion costs. And the third one here is the conversion of the transfer out of work in process into finished goods at $25,600. And then in part B, what they asked us to do was they asked us to come up with the balance in the work in process filling department. So they told us the beginning inventory was $2,200. If you look at the first entry, you had a debit to work in process of $20,250. If you look at the next entry here, we had a debit for the conversion cost of $6,372. And in the third entry, we had a transfer out of work in process into finished goods of $25,660. Therefore, the ending balance is $3,162. If you're a little bit fuzzy on those journal entries, remember in the other neat things tab that I posted, there were the rules of debits and credits. Important to remember when you look at these accounts, any inventory account is an asset account with a debit balance. And therefore, to increase it, you debit it. To reduce it, you credit it. And the credit to wages payable here, that these were when you actually incur wages, you debit wages expense. If it's not a manufacturing situation, you debit wages expense and credit wages payable. Here, since we're in a manufacturing application, we actually debited work in process for the wages expense. Okay, let's go back to practice exercise number 8. Let's see if I can find my way back here. Number 8. The cost for energy consumed in the producing goods in the baking department of Pan Company was $14,875 and $14,615 for June, respectively. The number of equivalent units produced in June and July was 42,000 and 3950. Evaluate the changes in the cost of the electricity, of the energy between the two periods. So what we want to come up with here is the cost of energy. And we want to be able to compare the 2 months, and the 2 months are June and July. So all we have to do is get the total cost and divide by the number of equivalent units, and that will give us the cost of electricity per equivalent unit. And then we'll compare the two and see what we can find. So this is exercise number 8. So the energy cost per pound in June, so there's my total energy cost. There was the equivalent units. My energy cost per units was 0.35. Simply take energy cost and divide by the equivalent unit. So it's 35 cents per pound. And then the energy cost for July, different costs, different equivalent units, is 0.37. So what's happened when we compare the two periods? We notice the energy cost per unit went from 0.35 to 0.37. So something's going on here. If the energy cost increased by 2 cents per pound, that indicates that we were less efficient in the month of July than we were in the month of June. Now, does that represent something wrong with the production process or an uptick in the utility cost? I don't know until I further investigate it. Okay, so that concludes. Those were the exercises. I would say, in terms of, as you reflect on these, be able to do a schedule like you see here in exercise 6, be able to do journal entries like you did in exercise 7, and be able to compare cost per units as you did here in exercise 8. All right, so until next time, adios, au revoir. This concludes. This is the last lecture I'll give you on chapter 3, and I look forward to getting into chapter 4 with you. These exercises that I went over both in class and in this brief little video will help you do the homework as well. If you haven't noticed that connection, the questions are not exactly the same, but they are similar. Okay, so good luck. Adios. Hasta luego. Au revoir. We shall see you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.